Hi, fifth graders. Today we will be reading chapter 11 of Pillage by Pillage Ch. Excerpt from section 5 of The Green Got Not as recorded by Daniel Phillips. It is the Pillage gift to be able to inspire even the weeds in the field to serve a purpose. But the gift only works as long as the growth feels necessary. It is a gift we have horribly abused. Chapter 11. Ask. It's not tall enough, Milo said, defeated. It was the tallest one I could find, I complained, looking up at the ladder. It barely reached halfway up the wall. Kate, I called. Nothing, she called back. Kate had been kind enough to stand guard on the front side of the conservatory and let us know if anyone was coming. I had endured another day of school, this one with no calamity or unexplainable incident. Milo and Kate wanted to go back to the basement, but I felt we should wait until later. And since we had a wait on our hands, I figured the best way to kill some time was to find a way into the conservatory. Scott had gone to town, which made our mission that much easier. I knew what I really should be doing was my homework and going to bed early, but the desire to figure out what was behind the wall was stronger than my need for sleep. What if we threw a rope up there? I suggested. Like Batman? You mean a grapple hook? Milo clarified. I could almost see the light going off in his head. Hold on! Milo took off running toward the direction of his house. I walked around the corner and joined Kate as she stared off into the distance. Nobody yet, she said, keeping her eyes peeled. Where's Milo? I think he ran home to get some rope. You know, there's probably nothing behind that wall but weeds, Kate said, sounding like the callous Kate I had first fallen in like with. Maybe, I shrugged. What then? I'll start obsessing about the basement. It must be nice to have options, Kate smiled. It's King's Plot always like this? I asked. So odd feeling? I don't know what you're talking about, she said, turning her gaze from the gardens to me. Her blue eyes pointed out the deficiencies of the gray sky. I feel like there's more than just mist in the air. Kate tilted her head and smiled. Milo told me about your mom, she said. I should have been nicer to you on the train. Don't worry about it, I said. And yes, you should have. Was she young? I guess, I answered. She always seemed old. Well, not really old, but weighed down, you know? Kind of. Being her son wasn't always easy, but I miss her now. You know, her journal talks about this garden. It does? Kate asked excitedly. She grew up here. And you never visited? Something happened, I replied. I don't really understand all of her journal, but something happened. I didn't even know about King's Plot until my uncle sent me a ticket. I wonder if she knew what's in the conservatory. I shrugged. Her journal doesn't mention anything. I watched Kate toss her hair over her shoulder. What about your parents? What about them? Are they alive? Yes, Kate said. They're kind of hippies. My mom paints pictures of fruit, and my dad's a gardener. Does he grow fruit? I asked. Kate stared at me. You know, so your mom can paint them? Kate halfway smiled. I turned from Kate and looked up at the tall cloud-topped back black walls of the conservatory. I let my eyes slow descend, gazing at the wall for any sign of how to get in. At the base of the walls grew a line of short, thick shrub oak. As my vision rested on the scrub oak, a thought came to me. What do you think made that salad fly around? The principal told us it was the wind, Kate laughed. Nice to know we're being taken care of by such brilliant minds, I said. Wind? Wind that only blew toward Wyatt? I don't know, Kate said. I was there, and I still don't understand it. And the ivy the day before, I continued, perplexed. It picked up Wyatt. Milo said it was weird. I thought about the bush and I thought about the bush that had wrapped when I looked at it. I turned my eyes toward the scrub oak and said, "Grow." The scrub oak began to shake and stretch. Kate heard the rustling and looked over. "What?" Kate started to say, but stopped in shock. The leaves reached up as it grew quickly against the wall. The small branches expanded rapidly, looking like woolly toothpaste being rapidly squeezed from a tube. The bush grew taller and taller, reaching my shoulders in no time. The weight of the bush, however, became too great and toppled over, falling to the ground. "Let's lift it," I said urgently. I got under the branches and pushed the scrub oak against the wall. It was still growing. "A little help?" I asked frantically. Kate stood next to me, both of us trying to keep the heavy growth pushed up against the wall. The branches above us became too heavy and flopped down, pulling us to the ground. I rolled out of the scrub oak and told the bush to stop. Kate got to her feet and stared at the huge pile of folded over scrub oak. The bush had stopped growing, just like I'd told it to. "How did you do that?" she asked, dumbfounded. "I've always been good with plants," I answered, equally stunned. "My dad's good with plants," Kate whispered in awe, "but he could never do that." "I told you, there's something in the air." "So you really did make the salad fly?" "I don't know," I said. "I think I was just looking out for me." "You're not normal," Kate said, stepping back. "This is not normal." I opened my hands and looked at my palms as though there might be an explanation there, printed there. "I can't explain it." "I don't believe it," Kate replied. We both looked back at the enormous scrub oak. "You know, if it would stick to the wall, we could climb it." "The wall's too slick," Kate pointed out. I instantly thought of the bricked-in archway on the back of the conservatory. "Come on," I said, reaching for Kate's hand. Surprisingly, she gave it to me. We ran around the conservatory to the archway. On the ground below the archway was a scrawny patch of purple ivy. I looked at Kate and shrugged. "Grow?" I pleaded. Just like that, the ivy began to crackle and squeak as it stretched upward. Large purple leaves bloomed and thick woody strands of vines reached up the wall like greedy fingers looking for something to clutch. The weight of the ivy caused it to lean forward a bit, but tiny fillers reached out and grabbed hold of the textured bricks. Thousands of tiny shoots spun out like cobwebs, grasping at the bricks and climbing the wall. The ivy lunged upward, taking a better hold with each brick it touched until the wall was covered with a thick, 4-foot-wide strip of growth. A tight, stretching sound crackled through the air. I stepped back and watched the ivy creep over the stone letters and into the mist. "Seriously?" Kate said, looking at me. "That's not normal." The noise stopped and the ivy settled. I looked up, grabbed a hold of a thick vine, and pulled up. It felt as if the vine was woven into the stone. "I think it could hold us." "What about Milo?" Kate asked. "He'll come eventually," I answered. "You first," Kate said. I reached up as high as I could and put my left foot into the ivy. The ivy was wet, but the texture of it made gripping it easy. I pulled myself up. After a few minutes, I looked down, surprised at how high I was. Kate was still on the ground. "Come on!" I yelled down. I pushed up into the mist until I could see the top edge of the wall. The clouds were so thick I couldn't see clearly if Kate was climbing behind me. I moved quicker, wanting desperately to see what was inside the conservatory. My hands reached the top, and I pulled myself up onto the lip of the wall. I looked down, but the mist was as thick as soup, and I couldn't see anything. The ivy curled over the top of the wall and ran down the inside. The thought of climbing into the closed area alone was 70% intriguing and 30% frightening. I finally saw Kate coming up through the fog. She was breathing hard and climbing fast. I reached down and helped her onto the top of the wall. "Great," she said, taking deep breaths. "I can't see anything." I slipped my legs around the ivy and began climbing down into the walled area. "We don't know what's down there," Kate said. That's why I'm going, I replied. It was even easier to climb down. The thick mist clung to me like wet cotton candy. I grabbed each strand of ivy carefully, making sure my hold was solid. After I climbed down about 5 feet, the mist started to break up and I could see soil down below. I climbed faster. In my haste, my right foot and left hand slipped simultaneously and I fell the last 4 feet onto the ground. The soil was soft and splashed up around me like thick water. I rolled to my feet, holding the dangling ends of the ivy for support. I looked around in awe. The inside of the conservatory felt huge. Scattered around the grounds were 8 small, large-leafed plants that stuck straight up out of the soil in a systematic pattern. In the center of the conservatory stood a small shed with a tiny windowed door that a thatched roof. A narrow brick path cut across the soil to the shed and then led to some wide metal bins on the far side. It was eerily quiet. Kate stepped down off the ivy, arriving in a far more dignified manner than I had. She looked around, taking in each detail. We both looked at the shack. "Come on," I whispered. We followed the brick path to the small shed. Kate knocked as though we were neighbors stopping by to borrow some sugar. Nobody answered. I tried the knob and the door opened, the hinges groaning in protest. The room was small, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, and was thick with dust and at least 100 cobwebs. The floor was wood except for in the center of the room where a circular pit was covered with a metal grate. Sitting on the metal grate was a burlap sack that looked to be filled with something heavy and lumpy. It was also covered in spider webs. "Cozy," Kate whispered. "What's in the sack?" "Look and see," Kate prompted me. "I hate spider webs," I admitted. "You're not impressing me," she said dryly. "I'm not trying to impress you," I said, bothered that she would even think that. "Well, whether you're trying or not, you're failing." I hated girls. I pushed through the cobwebs, blowing the few that stuck to my face out of my way. The burlap sack was covered with actual spiders, but as I reached down, they scurried off, disappearing into the shadows. I grabbed the bag by the bunched-up neck and tried to heft it. There was no way. It must have weighed at least 200 pounds. "If you can't lift it, just open it," Kate said, still standing at the door. "Thanks," I snapped. I pulled the top of the sack back and untied the band of material that was twisted around it. The neck of the bag opened about a foot wide. Light from one of the small windows poured over the sack, letting me easily see inside. The bag was filled with dull-colored stones. Some were oval, some were almost square, and I could see a couple that were flat and long. I reached in and pulled one out. The single rock must have weighed at least 30 pounds. "They're really heavy," I said. "I can see that. Bring one out." I awkwardly carried the stone to the shed's door where we could both look at it in the gray air. Kate wanted to hold it, but the weight of it made her change her mind. "I've never felt anything so heavy," Kate said, giving it back to me. "What is it?" I remembered the illustrations I had seen in my book last night. "I think it's an egg stone." "An egg stone?" Kate laughed. "What in the world is an egg stone?" "For a dragon," I said seriously. Kate laughed again. "You're serious?" "I don't know. That book we found had pictures of them." "Oh," she mocked. "Pictures? That settles it. So these rocks are dragon eggs." I wish I had never said anything about dragons. "I can make plants grow and let us fight people," I pointed out. "What's so crazy about dragon eggs?" "Plants are real." "Good point," I said, embarrassed. "I'm being stupid." Kate patted me on the back as if I were some sad, defeated little kid. "We should probably go," I said. "Scott will be home soon, and I don't want him dragging me back into the house by my ear again." I put the stone back in the bag, and we walked across the dirt toward the ivy. Kate was saying something about how all guys wanted dragons to be real when she tripped and fell onto the ground. I helped her up, happy for the chance to hold her hand. You okay? I asked. Kate looked at the ground where she tripped. There was a 6-inch hole and something black and metal showing. I got down on my knees and stuck my finger into the hole. Kate made a hissing noise and I pulled my hand back quickly. Seriously, I said, you're hilarious. I stood up and kicked at the hole with my shoe. More ground broke loose, falling down along the straight hole. I could see that the black metal was actually a bar. It looks like a cage, I said. Kate started to kick at the dirt while I jumped up and down. The dirt resisted at first, but then it broke apart like a moist cake and slid down into darkness. Kate screamed as a 10-foot section dropped from beneath her feet. It is a cage, I said excitedly. She moved back while I continued to push dirt through the bars. In a short while, we had the entire top cleared off. The cage was probably 20 by 10 feet and ran lengthwise along the wall with the arch. Uncovered, it looked like a large cattle guard. Maybe it was to stop animals from coming in here when the arch was open, I said, or to keep something from getting out. A loud thump sounded from behind. I jumped about 2 inches higher than Kate did. Turning around, I saw that the large metal horseshoe I had landed in the dirt. A long length of rope was tied to the horseshoe. It began to move, dragging through the dirt as it was pulled up and ultimately back over the wall. What was that? Kate asked. I think it's Milo's idea of a grappling hook. Kate and I climbed out of the conservatory and down the other side. Once we were both back on the ground, I gave the ivy a little instruction, and the branches and vines crawled back down the wall until it had returned to its original size. We walked around the wall to find Milo trying to throw his horseshoe again. Where'd you guys go? He asked. Inside, Kate said casually. How? He asked excitedly. We'll show you tomorrow. That's not fair, Milo whined. You guys should get home, I said. Your parents will be getting concerned. My parents aren't concerned, Milo complained. They're in town, shopping for a new stove because the one we have doesn't work and all the food we eat is cold. Have you ever had cold corn? It tastes... Milo trailed off as we stared at him. Fine, he said defensively, but I didn't run all the way home to get this rope just so we could give up. In the far distance, the sound of Scott's hounds could be heard. Well, we'll show you later, I promise, I said, but for now, I've got to go. Then, what about the basement? Milo asked. Let's check out the basement. Not tonight, I pleaded. I don't want Scott to catch me in the gardens. Plus, it's late and I'm tired. Tomorrow's Friday. We can stay out later. Milo argued with me for a bit more, accepting my excuses. He frowned, obviously upset. The hounds were getting louder. I'll see you guys on the bus, I waved. I took off running through the forest as Milo and Kate ran in the opposite direction. Hey, my friends, that is the end of chapter 11. Tomorrow we will be reading chapter 12. See you then.